Welcome to one of the last sessions of this year's Raisina Dialogue. I think it has, as always, been one where I think a diversity of views and a diversity of themes has been explored, and I think we'll all leave the Raisina Dialogue sort of enriched, intellectually enriched. The topic today, as was highlighted, is Made in Africa, the continent that will shape the future. And as we were waiting to come onto the stage, we were commenting that we felt like a football team ready to get onto the pitch to play a match. And I'd like to think of Africa in those terms these days. I think Africa has faced a number of challenges over the last several decades, but and also more recently with the COVID pandemic. But I think what has also emerged is an African continent that seems more energized, with greater agency, to take on the challenges and the opportunities that are presented. I mean, we can talk, obviously, and these are topics of great concern, and we'll touch on them a little bit in the panel this afternoon. You know, there are still great concerns about the conflicts raging in the Great Lakes, close to my own country. We're concerned about what is happening in Sudan and South Sudan and the Horn of Africa, and of course also in the Sahel. Many of these are long-standing conflicts that go through ebbs and flows. Economically, of course, a number of African countries face significant debt problems, debt challenges. And we're hoping that in the context of the G20 under South Africa's presidency, some of these issues can be moved forward a little bit more expeditiously. And South Africa has initiated an African expert panel to examine and explore some of the global structural issues that affect the cost of capital for many African countries. We've also embarked on, I think, a very ambitious but also sort of pragmatic approach to integrate the continent. So connectivity is a big issue for us. And there have been some steps through the African Continental Free Trade Area to realize that, although I would argue we can probably accelerate it. And on some of the big international financial architecture and climate finance issues, again, the African continent has put some concrete issues on the table. We face a demographic bulge, which can potentially be a boon, but it can also be a bane. And that, I suppose, is one of the biggest challenges that the continent will face, and which will determine how we face it and how we deal with it. I think will determine whether we're really able to shape the future in a very significant way. So, on this panel, we'll discuss issues of connectivity, issues of finance, economic growth, industrial development, new technologies, artificial intelligence, and I will also give you an opportunity to ask some questions. So let me start with Gwendolyn from EcoBank first, and perhaps because this is a topic that we in the context of the G20 have been talking about a lot these days, I'm going to ask you about the role that the financial sector has played and can play in Africa's transformation, and that affects both issues of inclusion, financial inclusion of women, of sort of encouraging entrepreneurship, infrastructure, and so on. But let's reflect a little bit on that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And you know, we're always talking about the emergence of Africa, and I believe that a lot of us Africans are already ready for it to emerge. A lot of work has been done. We cannot always bucket all of the countries into one. We have some of the countries that are very well ahead. We have some that are in the medium space, and we have some that are really lagging behind. But I believe that the financial sector has a critical part to play because we have to finance it somehow. I will just focus on three main issues for the interest of time. The first is the importance of financial inclusion. It might seem very mundane, but if you look at most of the African countries, you have just 30% of the populations that are banked, the rest are unbanked. And it's important for us to get a lot of that unbanked population into the ecosystem because that is how it will thrive. The second aspect of financial inclusion is getting women into the ecosystem because, as you know, a lot of the small and medium-sized enterprises in Africa are owned and run by women, but mostly in the informal sense of things. So we have to bring the women into the formal business ecosystem for the economies to thrive. The importance of digital banking, mobile money is so critical because it is how we are able to reach the least active members of the population and get them into the ecosystem. The second thing I would like to talk about is the infrastructure, as you mentioned. The infrastructure, investing and financing. Infrastructure is so key to economic development, and in most of the African countries, like I mentioned, you have a problem with the road networks, with the railways, with the seaports, and these are all essential elements for growth. So how does the financial sector participate in financing these infrastructure projects? We can do public partnerships. We would work with developmental agencies, and of course, we'll be able to work with the investment banks to be able to raise some of these funds for the infrastructure development, which is so critical. The third is trade. You know, for the economies to thrive, we have to be able to drive trade as aggressively as possible. Most of the African countries have foreign trade partners, which is good because partnerships are always good, but we have to work to diversify these partnerships and have more regional integration or regional trade. Right now, when we talk about regional trade, you have countries that are neighbors who do not trade amongst themselves. You look at Cameroon and Nigeria, most of the trade is informal. Most of the countries around Cameroon, the Gabons and the rest, Congo, Brazzaville, Chad, a lot of them are also landlocked countries that depend on Cameroon for their trade needs. But what are the regulations around the customs duty? How are the ports infrastructure? How is the logistics? So we need to be able to facilitate trade. We need to come up with cross-border solutions of how currency and money can flow, because if you do trade, you have to be able to receive payments and have solutions. We see a lot of regional players like EcoBank. It's a Pan-African bank. We are present in 33 African countries, and we have developed solutions around these three items I have mentioned. Financial inclusion, where we actually have a lot of digital products and services for the clients. We have developed a program for women empowerment, Elevate, which is to give them financing, give them training, give them digital literacy for them to be able to scale. And for the trade part, we have set up a single trade hub to allow importers and exporters have a platform that is secured for them to trade. And we also have cross-border solutions to facilitate payments, because one of the difficulties that we have is that we still have very cash-dependent environment. You have the traders that are moving around with millions of dollars to go and purchase goods. So having that platform that allows them to be able to send money securely, receive their payment is also critical. So Elizabeth, I'll stop there just with those three items to say that the private sector would have to play an integral part in the financial economic development of the continent Africa. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Gwendolyn. And it reminds me, of course, of the headline in The Economist about capitalism and Africa a few weeks ago. You've highlighted a number of important points, and I'm going to pick up a little later on the issue of trade, because the issue of trade and being able to increase trade among African countries also depends on us producing. So that speaks to industrialization and so on, and regional, the creation of regional value chains. But I think the other important element that we cannot forget if we're talking about an emerging Africa is, of course, education and skills. And so here I want to go to Madame Sarah Anyong, who was our AU Commissioner for Human Resources and science and technology, and really I'd like you to pick up on the issue of education and skills. One of the challenges that I know we face in South Africa is very much often about the disconnect between what you learn and what the workplace needs. And I think that remains a perennial problem across the continent.
Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone. Yes, it is Nelson Mandela that said education is the greatest weapon that can transform the world. And we believe in the power of education to transform people. But like you rightly said, what kind of education are we giving our demographic dividend? I refer to the youth of Africa as our demographic dividend because 70% of African population is made up of the youth. In 2017, the theme of the African Union for that year is harnessing their demographic dividend. Last year, it was educate an African fit for the 21st century. Many of our kids are reading courses that are not fit for the 21st century. And when they graduate, there are no jobs. And when there are no jobs, they say there are no jobs. But there are jobs, there are available jobs. But the skills they have acquired in school does not fit the job description that they need to go to. So that is why the academic must work with the industry in order to make sure we bring out skills people. The Continental Education Strategy for Africa, because the African Union has Agenda 2063, which is the blueprint of the Africa we want. And what is the vision of Agenda 2063? It is that vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own skilled citizens, able to play in the global arena. The world today is talking about different forms of technology, digitalization, etc. Our universities give such courses, but do they have the infrastructure to give those courses? Students read mechanical engineering, but they don't have a practical aspect of mechanical engineering. Students are reading chemistry, physics, biology in the secondary school and high school, but they don't even know what a stethoscope or a microscope look like. So it is high time the African education system began a new wave of education. And that was why last year, the theme of the African Union is educate an African fit for the 21st century. We need infrastructure. Continental Education Strategy for Africa has moved from the first decade, because the first decade is 2016-2025. Now we have created the third decade, which is 2026 to 2034. Some of the sub-themes of this decade is one, teacher professionalization. Many of our teachers are mediocre. They have not yet reskilled and upskilled. If kids can leave Africa, go to the US, read LPN, become nurses and caregivers, why can't we also reskill those? You'll be surprised that those who even have PhDs also go to the US and become nurses. Because what is important is the skills. So at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, this child is graduating, what are the skills? That is why the CSER speaks about STEM courses, teacher training education, early childhood education development. Because when you train a child from the very beginning to know that science, technology, engineering, mathematics are the very courses that can give them the job they want and that will put food on the table, at the early child education stage, they will begin to appreciate those courses. Because most often, they run away from physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, statistics. And those are the subjects that speak to the future of jobs. So that is one aspect of it. The second one is motivation. When you motivate a teacher, then you inspire them. Our teachers, they say a teacher's reward is in heaven. A teacher's reward should not be in heaven. The teacher should be well enumerated. If they have good salaries, they will concentrate and teach the kids well. But now, many of these teachers in government schools, what do? They have what we call PP, private practice. Or in my place, they call it cassava farm. They go elsewhere to look for jobs to get the money that they need to get. How is it that I train a child in the university and that child leaves and goes and reads finance or administration? In 2 years, that child can be the graduate, can build a house. But I, as a professor, I will teach for 15, 20 years and I cannot build a house. So it is very important that we look at the teacher's enumeration. The other one is the curriculum. We need to revisit our curriculum, because if the curriculum is revisited, then we will know what the industry needs. The Well, how will I put it? We will know the skills that the industry need, and you will use that skills to shape your curricula. What we don't have in Africa is technology transfer offices. Universities should be able to work with industries. The government should create their policies to speak to the academic area, and from that, the academic people need to speak to the private sector, so they know what is needed, the training needed, the skills needed, and that would be the way we can shape the young people that need to be skilled. Because what we have now is that everybody thinks that the grass is greener on the other side, the American dream, the European dream, but there is an African dream. Africa has a lot to give back to the youth of Africa. And that dream is the dream of Agenda 2063. And through education, we can consolidate Agenda 2063. When you talk about peace, there can be no peace if the youth are unemployed because they become robbers and thieves on the streets. If you talk about health, what is our health system speaking? It is only the way they are educated that can speak to it. What about TVET? Many people run away from TVET, these vocational courses. Well, those are the skills that can put food on the table: plumbing, mechanic, electrician, etc., hairdressing, hospitality, etc. But if you go to the university like we were discussing and you read religious studies and you come out with a degree in religious studies, how does that make you skilled for the job market? Industrialization. Now we're in the fourth industrialization. Is Africa ready for it? No. I will say no as a former commissioner. Because in the fourth industrialization, what we have is that we don't have connectivity, we don't have energy. South Africa is well ahead. Morocco is well ahead. Egypt is well ahead. Nigeria is well ahead. But there are some countries that are not yet there. And that is why there must be political will. The political will must have the vision to change to change the scenario in order for us to be able to proceed to the Agenda 2063, the vision of the Africa we want, that has 7 aspirations, that speaks for the need of skills, infrastructure, training, financing that Gwendolyn has mentioned, very, very important. Education must move with the Ministry of Finance to the other sector in order to know where to put our money. And that is why we have AFDB speaking about the African Education Fund with the African Union.
No, thanks very much. That was a really passionate speech on education. And I suppose what you are highlighting really is that we have a framework on the continent, and that is the Agenda 2063. The challenge continues to be how we can get that all the way down to the member states in terms of implementation. And I think that you've highlighted some of the pockets of excellence or good progress, but I think that that remains one of the challenges. And I think very importantly, we must never underestimate. And I know some African countries are hesitant to. They have an adversarial relationship sometimes with the private sector. And I think that we need to create bridges there, because I think that's very important. I'm going to move on to further west, to the Sahel, to the former Prime Minister Moussa Mora. And then I'll come, and then I'll move right to the top and deal with North Africa. What I want to ask you is, obviously you come from an area that over the last several years has seen a great deal of instability. There's been some democratic regression. There have been coups and so on. And there's also been, I think, a lot of external actors that have been engaged. How do we convert what has been happening in West Africa into momentum for stability, for addressing some of the significant socioeconomic grievances that have led to many of these coups and the involvement of external actors, also in a region which is very mineral rich?
Thank you, Miss. You are right. In the Sahelian region, we host a lot of external actors. First, in security issues. We host a United Nations mission in our own country, Mali. We had also French army, Barkhane, which covered 5 Sahelian countries, from Chad to Mali, through Burkina Faso, Niger. We also dealt with a lot of organizations like European Union, cooperation, and a training mission. And after hosting all of these actors, the big lesson to take from that is, overall, the most important thing is the internal actors, the root causes of the crisis, and the ability of the states to face, really, the different challenges they faced. This is the most important thing to take on the action from these internal actors. And let's move on to economy, because the most important thing is here economy, and economy also explains a lot of crises we face in our zone. Madam Commissioner talked about the unemployment for youth. And unemployment for youth is caused by economical weakness. And in this way, my understanding is the external actors are useful. But we should know precisely our own interests first. Organize ourselves to deal with all issues linked to economy, and then try to work with whoever is interested to come in, to invest, to help, to finance, and to cooperate. This is the ideal way our country should follow. If we are too focused on external actors, if we are totally oriented to their interests, we lose a lot of opportunities. The first is inside. And the manager of EcoBank talked also about that. The financing, we are too much focused on external actors. And we are not investing enough in inclusivity and how to get the saving for our own compatriots and to orient it to finance our needs. And this is what I would like to say on this topic. External actors are needed. External actors are, without any doubt, positive, efficient, but first, be focused on our own interest, organize ourselves, and enhance our strength in order to host them and to orient their action on our interests. I think this should be the key on this way.
So I think we need to be very clear about what we want and what our plan is. We need to have a plan. But I want to quickly ask you a follow-up question. Clearly, the issue of minerals, and specifically critical minerals, have dominated much of the discussions, both in the world, but also on the continent. And the AU itself has undertaken a number of initiatives, including through its agency, the African Minerals Development Center, etc. Mm-hmm. Critical minerals is seen as part of a strategy for green industrialization. Mm-hmm. What is the debate in West Africa in that regard?
Yes, even in this way, I can give you the example of my country. We are the third gold producer of Africa. We host a lot of gold mines from South Africa, Canada, Australia. But at the same time, we have the internal actor of the gold sector. But they are working on the non-formal sector. They are not enough organized, they are not enough financed, they are not enough helped by the states. And this is a real mistake. And we first should help them organize in order to get an internal actor enough strong to compete and to invest and to develop the sector. We are too focused on external actor, but we should work with them in order to attract the huge part of the value chain on this way. The key question is how to attract and how to keep the huge part of the value chain of the exploitation of mineral resources. And now Africa has a lot of things to do on this way because the state are not enough strong, enough organized, enough skilled to know about how to attract and to keep the value on the sector of the raw material. This is also the key for this domain.
Great. Thank you, Prime Minister. Let me move on to Tunisia and to former PM Mehdi Joma. You know, Tunisia is in a, I suppose some would say a strategic location at the top of the continent, and also sort of dealing with a lot of the fallout in many ways from what has happened in the Sahel. It has also gone through its phases of instability over the last decade or so, and is also has also engaged with the European Union, also in terms of managing migration flows from the continent. I'd like you to just very briefly sort of paint a little bit of a picture of some of the trajectory of the Tunisian economy and developments there, in the context also of the migration challenge, because that is something that is dominating not just Africa-Europe relations, but a more broader debate globally around migration.
Thank you. First, hello to everyone. You asked a lot of questions. I will try to summarize all of that, saying first, yes, Tunisia has a privilege, an advantage with the geographic position. It's in the corridor between Europe and Africa. It's a part of the MENA region, and it gives Tunisia some advantage, even for the economic. And I think one of the best future, or the things that we have to speak and to emphasize on the economy and the growth and the projection for the future in the economy, is the geographic position. But as well, I think we create a base of skilled people. We invested a lot in education, and today, when you see the economic landscape, it's the first characteristic is the diversification. It's diversified, really. So we have from agriculture, tourism, agro-food industry, but as well we have automotive, aerospace industry, and now, since 2 decades, we developed the digital, the information economy, and now for AA. Tunisia has the challenge and the ambition today to become a hub for new technology for the region, and it's the skilled people, the high level of education that we have of the young people allows us to do that, but as well we are in a cross area from between Europe and Africa. That's an important, really an important thing. And what we see, we are speaking about Africa, we are speaking about this migration, this all this is linked. We know that Africa today is one of the most young continent, with the most growing demography. One birth on 2 in the world is occurring in Africa. So we have a population which is under 19 years, I think, the average of the age. So we have a lot of need. We have a lot of need of education, of health, as well training. And Tunisia intends really to position its economy on that, creating hubs on education, creating hubs on health care, creating hubs on technology. And we have already a large part of the infrastructure, but we have to develop the infrastructure. So that's the situation, the economic situation in Tunisia. We invested a lot since the independence, since the 1950s. in the education, and we have now a good basis stable, and that's why even with the transition this last year, what we call the revolution on the Arab Spring, this economy showed some resilience, showed some agility to react. And this agility, this resilience allows us today to have the ambition really to be in the trend of what is happening in the world. And as well, we are impacted by all these changes. You know that something like 2/3 or 3/4 of our exchange of our trade is made with Europe. So when there is a crisis in Europe, we are impacted. But in the meantime, we have people who are aware of what is happening in Europe and all the new technology, all the evolution. About the migration, your question about the migration, you know, it's evident. You don't need to have a big philosophy on that. You have a continent, European continent, with all the wealth they have today, with this weak demography, and you have all this growth that I was speaking about in Africa. It's evident. It's evident that we will have a flow, and you have to choose in this flow, or we manage to have a flow of knowledge, of education, of investment from Europe to Africa, or we will have the flow of young people from Africa to the... So stop running around that means today, yeah, you can stop some immigrants, but what you will do? But there is a need in Europe for immigrants. There is a need for young people. There is a need for a workforce. The question today is how really to prepare the future, to have a long-term vision, and how to make this an opportunity. The preference of African country and the African people is to stay in their country. They're very good in their country. You know, Africa is a very nice continent. It's a green continent, very nice with an abundant nature. But we need to create the wealth there. That's why we are aware today in Africa that we have to stop delivering only raw material, but we have to transform. We have to educate people. We have to get and to catch the added value, to fix people there. That's the way to face the immigration, and not with police and boundaries. Whatever they did, whatever we did, with whatever we will do, we cannot stop it. The only way is really to balance things between the two continents.
Thank you. I think an interesting statistic is that by 2030, I think half of the number of young people entering the workforce in the world will actually be from this continent. So I think the demographic challenge is significant. And in that sense, I'm going to put a simple question to you, Karim, something we've been discussing in the last couple of days.
I'm scared.
No, you shouldn't be scared. Is that, you know, people say, you know, sometimes they underestimate the importance of growth, and we add all sorts of adjectives to it. But let's talk a little bit about that and the macroeconomics that can make this tick.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And let me start to 5 points. The first one is on the environment, how we see the world from Africa through our glasses. I think there are common things there. The second, I would say a few words about what could be a growth strategy, and the Agenda 2063 is not a growth strategy. Interesting objective and goals, but it is not a growth strategy. And how to do it, and what to do in our fourth point, how the countries should relate with their environment. And the fifth point will be, what do we want, Africa? Well, how we want to relate with the rest of the world. And some of the points are relevant for emerging market and developing countries. So on the environment, it is a difficult environment, and this we share with many countries. It is a difficult environment for various reasons. The first one is because geopolitics is there, and it makes it tougher for policymakers. It translates, of course, in nationalism, protectionism, fragmentation, industrial policies, which are subsidies. So a difficult environment. The second pillar, if you want, in the nexus that makes it difficult is the fiscal space that has shrunk over the years. Debt has accumulated. We have around a dozen of countries under debt distress. They're all in Africa. And some are suffering to reimburse. They're not in debt distress, but they are doing tough trade-offs with other expenditures. So fiscal space is minimal. Central bank credibility has been affected in some countries, and there's some issues with exchange rate. Inflation has left some scars as well. So on the macro policy front, it's a difficult sort of equilibria to maintain. The third dimension is social demands. Increase in defense spending are increasing in Africa like everywhere in the world, putting more pressure on fiscal space. Social demands from populations to deliver post-COVID. There are lots of expectations from governments. Population expect functioning health systems, quality education. Everywhere, citizens are turning to governments for responses, even in advanced economies, for demands for protections. And I think it's going to continue making governments' life tough, difficult, technically difficult. The third dimension is structural ongoing changes that are not producing short-term effects, but are starting to affect policies and real life. It's climate, it's demography, mainly, I would say, just to be short. So to summarize, a tough environment that calls for complex mix of public policies. What could be the elements of a response, of a growth strategy? Because reminded you, 22 of the 26 low-income countries are in Africa. It's in the interest of the world that these countries catch up. It's a source of growth for you, all of you here, for advanced economies. It's good business to catch up, It's quite simple to catch up in terms of economic policies. So the element of a of a growth strategy, Madame Commissionaire, you mentioned a few of those. It's industrial policy. We shouldn't be ashamed. We were ashamed to do industrial policy. We were ashamed by the international institution. I did this myself when I was a world banker. It doesn't work. Governments don't get into business, don't intervene. No, industrial champions, national champions, etc. It's back with a revenge. Agriculture needs attention, delicate attention. It needs to be nurtured. We need to look at it very carefully. It's essential. It is back at the top of the agenda. Food security is a fundamental issue with climate change. It's going to continue. Agriculture, Africa has the highest agricultural potential of the world. It's one of the largest continents, arable lands, etc. Labor-intensive activity are essential with low-skilled worker, with the huge labor force we have. For Morocco, for instance, is tourism. Every country should find, its own response. It's prudent macroeconomic policies, of course, entrepreneurship and innovation. Give space. We're in a country where they changed their policy in the early 90s, and they had, India had a strong response from just letting go through private innovation and entrepreneurship. Again, this is fragile. It needs to be managed carefully. There are no silver bullet. And all this is an alchemy. If the formula to accelerate growth was on sale at the next shop at the corner of the street, we will know it, no? It's not there. So there's a magic there. The magic comes, and that's my third point, from the how. And the how is what Minister Mara said. It's the fabric, it's the leadership, it's the politics, it's the country being together as one, united with a goal, softly, not with authority. It needs to be smart and intelligent. It needs to be delicate again. We need more delicate public policies that are looking, as you do juries. It's not bulky. It's complex, it's difficult. And one of the mistakes of development economists is that we had formulas and implementation is detailed, it's details. It will happen. That's not true. Yes, that's my fourth point. Capacity. Capacity. Quality of the decision-making process in countries is essential. And that you need transparency, you need competition, you need to reward skills, you need to have attractive salaries to attract your best brain to work for government. And again, it doesn't happen by itself. It needs to be organized and closer relations with academia and science to have science-based public policies that are assessed, transparent, evaluated, that use science in the fabric. I can give you an example because myself, I'm in a think tank, but I'm also at a university, and a significant share of phosphate export, which Morocco is the largest, one of the largest, if not the largest, of combined fertilizer and phosphate, have been reinvested in science, creating a university that is inclusive for all Moroccans, that is top-notch today. That's a way to reinvest proceeds from commodities for long-term investment in human capital. And I think that's essential. Get closer to your professors. I know they're boring. They say, well, it depends, it's difficult, minister, it's not gonna be as straightforward as you think. I need results in 3 months, but you need to invest for the future. And these kind of discussions needs to happen. Make sure you always have an intellectual next to you, and technocrat, intellectual technocrat, not only technocrats. Someone that knows the philosopher, that does the culture, that can mobilize research centers and hundreds of academics behind to help you do great policies. And you have the right to do mistakes. Experimentation should be authorized in public policy making. We need it. I'm going to conclude.
Mistakes are critical.
Yes. Fifth point, and I conclude. Fourth point. Be in your region. Look at your neighbors. You said the grass is always greener, somewhere else. Be in your region. I can give you an example. In Morocco, we're investing a lot on the Atlantic. And it's a royal initiative that we have with the Sahelian countries, trying to give them access. So think of your region and work with your neighbors, even if they can be difficult. We know that it's tough. Neighbors are difficult, even our personal life. It's like my professors, I tell them they work better with someone in Australia rather than the guy in the next door.
Karim, okay? I'm just looking at the time.
Karim is going to close.
I'm being given.
What do we want? Yeah. 1 point on international financial architecture and the reform of the multilateral development banks. We need to say that they are important for Africa. This message has to go through. You've been working, I know, a lot on that, and together with us as well, and many others. It is important for Africa. Maybe less for India or the middle-income countries of Africa, but for the low-income countries of Africa, it's essential, and this message has to go across. If you want to destroy or you maintain or kill softly these institutions, you're taking a responsibility vis-à-vis Africa. The rest is details. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Karim. Okay, so I'm not going to come back with some geopolitical questions, and I'm hoping the young fellows there at the back on the elevated podium can ask some difficult questions, but not PhDs. Let's keep them easy to respond to, at least in terms of time. Yes.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Aaron from Nigeria. I just want to ask, all of you have mentioned the Agenda 2063, which was postulated since 2013. However, reports shows that only 24% of legislatures across African continent even knows that this exists. So to what extent does this conversation remain at the highest level and never translate into subnationals where the actual work needs to be done? I'd like to hear your comments on this, please.
That's a very good question. Right? Can I?
Hello.
Can
I?
Yes.
My name is Babalo from South Africa. My question is, how can the African continent free trade position Africa as the key player in global trade?
Ma'am, towards your right.
Hello, ma'am.
Towards your right.
Wait, hold on.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, one last question and then we're going to...
Towards your right.
Hello.
My name is Daniel. I'm from Ghana. I wanted to also add on the African continental free trade area question. How can we employ frameworks like the AFCFTA to drive a unified strategy that ensures that Africa's vast natural resources are used for industrialization and value addition rather than continuing the cycle of raw material exports?
Okay, great. We touched a little on that, but let me then, one last question from there.
Hello, do you think multilateralism has failed Africa with respect to climate change and sustainability? And is minilateralism is the way forward? And if yes, then how to navigate that? Okay. Shall I repeat? Oh.
That's it. Last question.
Yeah. The speakers talk about the importance of digital banking. So I wanted to ask, how can we integrate the open sources and special technologies into the same? Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Let's start with the last question. That's really a banking question. So Gwendolyn, I don't know if you want to respond to that, and then we'll...
Thank you for that question. I think I'm going to answer that in two phases. When we talk about digitalization, we look at it from a global point of view. I think the focus should be digital products that are fit for purpose for Africa, because it can be fit for purpose elsewhere, but does not meet the immediate needs of the population in Africa. So yes, we need it. We need AI. We need all of that, robotics, but we are encouraging the people formulating them to make sure it is fit for purpose. And that's why the fintech challenges that we have, like at EcoBank, we do a fintech challenge each year. And the focus is having fintech that are coming up with solutions that are fit for the immediate needs, that are fit for the demands of the African population. If not, they'll be nice to have, but not relevant. And I think the question that was asked about the African free trade area is so critical to geopolitics and is critical for economics, because one of the weaknesses that we have is that we are involved in many regional associations, regional initiatives, but we need to make sure that agreements like the African Free Trade Agreement goes multilateral. It has to come out of Africa and not only be boxed into Africa. If not, it will not gain the scale that is needed. And that requires that all the African countries, when they are on a global stage, should be unified to speak the same language. Because if there's a lot of diversification and disagreement on a global stage, then we'll not be able to really reap the full benefits of some of these initiatives that we are doing at the regional level. And there has to be that inter-discussion amongst the governments for geopolitical purposes, because if we do not, like the minister was saying, if we do not have conversations with our neighbors, if we do not focus on being intentional about regional integration policies, procedures, and the rest, if we do not focus on what our custom policies are, we will not be able to gain scale.
Okay, 30 seconds. Let's start with...
30 seconds.
No, I will start just to say that Africa is one of the most dynamic continents today. It's a part of this moving world. I think we will live in the next decades the transformation of Africa with these young people, with all this natural wealth, just to invest in education, in new technology, which is needing young people, smart, young, educated people, and we have all the potential. So for everyone.
Prime Minister,
Africa, it's an opportunity for the future.
Let's move on.
30 seconds. The most important thing is unity for Africa. To take advantage in the multilateralism, to get the Africa free trade done, free trade area done, we need more unity. And more unity is based on leadership, and specifically leadership from the great countries of Africa, Egypt, South Africa, Nigeria, and so on. We have to push them on this way.
Thank you very much. Madam Commissioner, very, very briefly, because time's up and we're going to be thrown off the stage.
Yes, many people don't know about Agenda 2063, but everybody in this room can talk about the SDG goals. Why? It's because it has not been disseminated. And take note, Agenda 2063 is the agenda accepted by the Assembly, and the Assembly means the head of states. And then when we function within the Commission, we have different specialized technical groups where ministers of education, youth, all the ministers concerned with the different things work together. So the point here is that we are not walking the talk. Implementation is not taken, and it has to move from the continental to the regional, regional to the national, and national to the grassroots.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Karim, last words, and then we're off.
Just growth is a mystery, so you can find the formula by accident only. Don't tinker at the margin, and with hard work and skills, countries can find it. So don't expect recipes, don't expect it from coming from outside. It has to come from within. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much.